I know, look at that, look at that. Raspberry chocolate chip bread. Do I need to even say anything else? That's what I'm gonna show you how to make today. I'm Angela. Welcome to Art of Creation Homestead. This is November, and we still have plenty of raspberries producing outside. I mean, they are still growing like crazy. So we have plenty of raspberries in the freezer, and plenty on the vine well, on the plant, but they just aren't ready today. So, I came up with this recipe just so I could use up some of those beautiful frozen raspberries that I had. And it turned out amazing. So I thought I would share it with you. So let's get started. We will start by preheating your oven to 350 degrees. And then after that, you will want to melt 1/4 of a cup, which is 1/2 stick, of unsalted butter. If all you have is salted, that's fine, but leave out the pinch of salt that I'm going to put in later. But you want to melt the butter first. See, we have our beautiful melted butter in this mug. You want to melt the butter first because you want it to have time to cool a little bit so that it doesn't curdle your eggs. Well, your egg. So now, what we have in here, we have 2 1/4 cups of all-purpose flour. And to that, we are going to add 1 teaspoon of baking soda. And we are going to add a pinch of salt because I used unsalted butter. Remember, if you use salted butter, do not add the salt. That was pink Himalayan, by the way, but you can use whatever salt you use in your house. Now we have 1/4 of a cup of white granulated sugar. This is pure cane sugar. And we have 3/4 of a cup of firmly packed light brown sugar. Mixing the sugars that way makes all the difference in the flavor, because you can use just white sugar if that's all you have in the house. It's just some white sugar, which, by the way, all I'm doing is mixing this together and breaking up the lumps of brown sugar. But if all you have in the house is white sugar, you can go ahead and use that. The brown sugar does add a little bit more flavor to it, so it won't be as flavorful, but it will still be good. And if all you have is brown sugar, then use a cup of brown sugar. But I divide it for flavor and sweetness. Now, all of our dry ingredients are nicely mixed and ready to go. So now, we're going to start on our wet ingredients. We have this, we'll set this aside. And here, we have 3/4 of a cup of buttermilk. This is whole milk, cultured buttermilk. But if you do not have buttermilk in the house, I keep buttermilk in the house for making cornbread and making biscuits. And also it's great in cakes and quick breads like this. It makes everything so much moister. So I keep buttermilk in the house. But if you do not, and all you have is regular old white milk in the house, regular old milk, you can still make this bread. Just take your 3/4 of a cup of milk, throw in a little splash, just a tiny little splash of either lemon juice or white vinegar. Leave it for about 5 minutes and it will curdle. It won't really be cultured buttermilk, but it will be curdled milk, which is very similar. So you can still make it if you don't have buttermilk. Although I would not recommend, if all you have in the house is skim milk, I would not recommend making this with trying to make buttermilk out of skim milk. It's just not going to work right. 2% or whole will be fine. So we have 3/4 of a cup of buttermilk here. To that, we are going to add 1/4 of a cup of oil. Any type of oil that you have in the house, melted coconut oil, anything works. Vegetable oil, any neutral flavored oil. You don't want to use olive oil. You don't want to use something that's going to have a strong flavor. But any neutral flavored oil. Go ahead and add that straight into your buttermilk. And then we're going to add our half a stick of melted butter. See why you wanted it to cool? So then we're going to add 1 egg. Isn't that a beautiful egg? From one of our beautiful new hams. So when you're cracking an egg, to make sure you don't get any shells in your mixture right here, you always want to crack it into something else. So I just crack it into one of my dirty measuring cups over here that I had the brown sugar in. It makes it easy and you don't have something else to clean up. So now you want to add that egg to your wet ingredients. And you want to add 2 good splashes, which is probably about 2 teaspoons of pure vanilla extract. Now, you want to beat that up a little bit because you want to break up that egg. And you will notice that the butter will start to clump a little bit into your buttermilk and stuff. And you'll start to see some fat particles in there. That's just fine. That is perfectly normal, perfectly fine. So now we're going to pull our dry ingredients back over here. And we are going to pour in our wet. Now make sure you scrape down. And don't throw the spatula. Any of you who have been watching me know that kitchen accidents are frequent with me. But I did not expect that spatula to go flying. Now, when it comes to stirring this, you can use a spoon, a wooden spoon, anything like that. But I'm choosing to use a silicone spatula because you can more fold. When you start adding your raspberries, you can more fold them in than anything. Now you want to start folding in your wet ingredients. See? And when it's this consistency, when you still see some dry lumps in there, but you also see some wet, when you see it like that, but you still see some dry in there, that's your time if you want to add your raspberries and your chocolate chips. Now, here's where it all gets up to you. At this point, you can make the decision. You can use fresh raspberries or frozen raspberries. Either will work for this. And if they're frozen, you have a choice there too. You can leave them frozen and toss them with a tiny bit of flour, about a tablespoon of flour, to coat them so they won't all sink to the bottom. Or you can thaw them and let some of the juice drain off. Here's going to be the difference. If you throw them in frozen, they're going to release a lot of moisture into your bread, and you will end up with a darker crust, and it will take a little longer to bake. If you thaw them and blot away some of the moisture, then they're going to break up in here, and you're going to get little nuggets of raspberry all throughout the bread instead of whole raspberries. That's up to your preference. We really like it better with the raspberries thawed, because when they break up in here, you get more of that raspberry flavor throughout the bread instead of just a pop of raspberry here and there. Because then it more tastes like chocolate chip bread with some raspberries. You want this to be raspberry bread with chocolate chips. So if you let them thaw, they will break up. Don't be panicked. When you stir them in, they will start to break up. But it'll be fine. You actually kind of want that. But if you would rather have whole raspberries, then go with that. But here we have 2 1/4 cups of thawed raspberries. So we're going to throw these in. And we're going to fold them in just a tiny bit into our batter. See, I'm just folding. Even though it's okay to break them up, you still want to be gentle. You don't want to juice these raspberries. And don't be alarmed. They are going to change the color of your bread. It is going to be a purpley type color. And here, now see, we still have some dry bits of flour in there. That's what you want, because it's going to coat your raspberries, it's going to coat your chocolate chips, so everything doesn't sink to the bottom. So here we have 2/3 cup of mini chocolate chips. See, I'm using the minis. If you don't have minis, well, first I'll say this. I chose to use the minis so they'll be more well distributed throughout the bread. If you don't have minis, you can use regular semi-sweet chocolate chips. It will be just fine. You will just get a bigger chunk of chocolate in your bread. And I have yet to ever hear someone complain and say, oh, that chunk of chocolate was way too big. I would never complain about that, but I'm a chocoholic, just to be honest. So now you want to gently fold all this together. And this isn't going to take long at all, because you do not want to overwork. This is a quick bread, so you do not want to overwork the gluten in your flour, because you do not want to make it tough. You want it to be a nice, soft, tender crumb, almost like a cake. You want it to have a more tender crumb. You don't want it to be like a good stretchy loaf of white bread. You want it to be tender and moist. So don't overwork it. Once you see that all of the dry ingredients, that you don't have any more dry pockets, be sure and scrape from the bottom. See, just like I'm doing here, scrape from the bottom. Be sure and do that to get to make sure that all your flour is incorporated. And just kind of fold. And as you can tell, you have this beautiful swirled batter right now. Isn't that gorgeous? And you see all those chocolate chips in there. You see some whole pieces of raspberry and some broke up pieces of raspberry. You just can't beat it, people. This is some amazing stuff. I just can't express how amazing this is. You're going to have to make this. To taste how amazing this is, you're just going to have to make it. Don't trust me. Don't take my word for it. Just make it. So, now, we've got a regular loaf pan. I've lined mine with foil for easier cleanup, and also to work as a sling so that I can pull the bread out, because you're wanting to pull the bread out of the pan while it's still hot. It's easier if you have a sling. You can use parchment paper to do this, or you can line it with foil like I have. But either way, you want to either spray it with cooking spray or butter it and flour it just a little bit. I am choosing the easy route today. I am choosing cooking spray. You just want to give it a good coat. And now you want to empty your batter into your pan. Just like this. Just empty your batter straight into your pan. And it is absolutely gorgeous. And the thing is, because those beautiful raspberries, it hasn't even started baking and it already smells amazing. I'm a batter taster anyways. And this batter tastes really good too. So if you're a batter taster, go ahead. And I have no fear of it, because I know these chickens that laid that egg personally. None of them have salmonella. My children do not have salmonella. So, now you spread it out on top. Now, isn't that a beautiful, beautiful batter? So now, what we're going to do, we're going to pop this in the oven. Like I said, at 350. This should take about 45 minutes to an hour. Okay, it's out of the oven. And this house smells amazing. And look at that deliciousness. Isn't that just glorious? I mean, you can't beat the smell or the look of this. Now, I'm about to give you a little tip here. This baked, I know it's oddly specific, but it baked for 1 hour and 5 minutes. Now it may be totally different in your oven based on the pan you use, based on if you use fresh raspberries or frozen, if you let them thaw, if you do them frozen, it's gonna vary. But a surefire way to tell, you'll hear so many people in baking recipes tell you to insert a toothpick in the center, and when it comes out clean, that it's done. Let me give you a little pro tip here. You really don't want to wait until the toothpick comes out clean. Here's why. When you have baked goods, there's a thing called carryover cook time. Even though it's removed from the oven, just from the heat of the pan and in the loaf of bread itself, it's going to continue to bake even out of the oven. So if you leave it until you get a completely clean toothpick, it's perfectly done right that minute. So by the time it carryover cooks, you're going to get a little bit drier, a little bit over-baked bread, or muffins, or cake, or anything like that. What you want to do is when you insert a toothpick in the center, you want it to come out with some moist crumbs on it. Not wet batter, but just moist crumbs stuck to the sides of the toothpick. That means it's a little itty bit underbaked. So, what you do to take care of that, you pull it out of the oven at that tiny bit underbaked, and you leave it in the pan for 5 minutes. And the carryover cook time will finish it up to a beautiful, moist crumb. Then after the 5 minutes is over, we'll be back and I'll show you how we unmold this and how our foil sling or parchment paper sling, whichever you choose to use, makes this process so much easier. It's been 5 minutes and the bread is still hot. You don't want to let it completely cool in the pan because that carryover cook will get you and it will make it completely hard. You want to pull it out now. That's where this little sling is going to help. So all I'm doing is raising up the edges of the foil or the parchment paper, whichever you chose to use. And now I'm just going to grab this. Now it's still going to be a little warm. And I'm just going to pull up. And see, it came out completely clean. And see, also, no dishes to wash. Your pan's clean. Which is always a plus. Now, you want to take the foil down at this point. And you want to flip the bread out off your foil and flip it back onto its bottom. Just like that. It's not so hot that, now, I have asbestos hands from all the cooking that I've done, so my hands can handle some serious heat. But it's not going to be so hot at this point that you can't handle it. As you can see, I'm touching it and not being burnt. So I just rolled it over onto my hand and then flipped it back over. Now, you're going to leave this to cool. I'm going to try to leave it to cool completely. I can't guarantee you that it's going to cool completely before I slice into it. Because I have to tell you, it's pretty doggone good warm when the chocolate's a little gooey. It's pretty doggone good that way. So, whenever I can no longer help myself and I cut it, I'll be back and show you what it looks like. Because I promise you, it's glorious. It's still hot. It's not hot, but it's still warm. And guess what? I am completely impatient. And I can't wait any longer because I love that gooey chocolate. So, I'm gonna cut in. I don't know about y'all, but I really love this end piece. Do you guys like the end piece or the middle piece? I'm an end piece type girl because you get that moist, beautiful, tender crumb inside. And then you get the crunch on the outside. That is just the perfect bite to me. So now, we're gonna cut into this. And as you can see, it's got a great crust. And oh, look at that, look at that. Look at that. Isn't that completely impressive? That is just glorious. Look at this. Look at this. Isn't that beautiful? You get some whole raspberries in there, some broke up into pieces. That's why I thawed them, because that way you get more raspberry distributed throughout. Now, I'm going in, people. Look at that. Oh, that's amazing. I'm going in, people. Honestly, this is beyond words. This is so delicious, it's beyond words. You get that sweet, tangy thing going on from the raspberries. Then you get those little pops of chocolate that don't overpower that beautiful raspberry. And then the bread, you get that slight brown sugary flavor that is so amazing. And then you get that vanilla. That's why I added the 2 teaspoons. That way you get that little hint of vanilla. People, don't take my word for it that this is delicious. Make it for yourself. Your family is going to thank you for this. Your mouth is going to thank you for this. You gotta try this. We appreciate you watching. And now I'm going to go because I'm going to finish off this piece of bread. God bless you and have an amazing day.